Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and as always, it's great to have you guys here on this fine Tuesday. We have a lot to discuss on today's show, but before we get into that, I just want to remind you guys to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show. And then for bonus coverage materials that are not covered by this broadcast, make sure to go to patreon.com and search up GSMC Sports Network. So, with that, let's kind of get into what the show is going to be about for today. So we're going to go through the injury report in the first part of the show because there were some notable injuries. Obviously, the big one, probably the biggest one, was Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings getting placed on IR with a hamstring injury. So he's going to miss the next 4 games. So we'll get into that and some of the other injuries around the league. Then we are going to go into recapping the Monday night game between the Packers and the Raiders. Raiders picking up a 17-13 win over the Packers. So we'll get into that in the second part of the show. Then in the third part of the show, we're going to get into what's wrong with the New England Patriots. We'll talk about their struggles from the start of the season, and kind of give like an overview on what's been going on there, at least from my perspective. That'll be in the third part of the show, and then the final part of the show we'll talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. They picked up a big win on Sunday against the Cardinals to get themselves back on track, and we'll talk about whether or not they're back, and is this a winning streak is in the works with this win now for the Bengals. So that's basically the rundown for today's show. So let's get into the first part of the show, which is talking about the injuries from Sunday, because there was a lot of them. We had star players getting hurt, and guys are going to be out for some games. So obviously the biggest one is Justin Jefferson. On Sunday against the Chiefs, he suffered his hamstring injury, and he missed the final, I think it was like 21, 22, 23, the final 23 snaps of, or the Vikings' final 23 snaps of the game. He really actually had a quiet game against the Chiefs. The Chiefs kind of did a great job of, containing him. Also because the Vikings' offensive line was also very bad on Sunday as well. But yeah, he had a quiet game, and he ended up getting hurt. And listen, the Vikings right now 1-4. I mean, they're not going anywhere this year now, especially without Justin Jefferson. I mean, this is a team that struggles to run the football with Alexander Mattison, and obviously they traded for Cam Akers to help them out in the running game. But now with him being out, you still got some playmakers, of course. You got T.J. Hawkinson at tight end, Jordan Addison, the rookie, who had a touchdown on Sunday, and you also have KJ Osborne, who's a decent receiver as well. But, I mean, that production is not going to get replaced with Justin Jefferson being out. And especially now when you have a team that's heading in the direction that they're heading in, I mean, they might start trading pieces. I mean, you talk about Kirk Cousins. His name's been floated around in trade rumors. And listen, I think he could go to a team that needs a quarterback, and he could be good. I think he's a solid quarterback. I mean, the Vikings, it looks like they want to move in a different direction. It doesn't seem like they are prioritizing trying to bring him back. So I think they're going to try to maybe tank and get a quarterback in the upcoming draft. I mean, I think that's what's going to end up happening. And it's just crazy how the Vikings last year, I think they were 11-0 in one-score games, and this year they're 1-4. All their games are one-score games. Because they lost I know they lost to the Eagles in week 2. Who did they lose to in week 1? They lost to the Chargers. That was another one-score game. They defeated the Panthers by 8. They just lost to the Chiefs. But who did they lose to in week 1? Now I forget off the top of my head. Let's see. Oh, the Buccaneers. That's who it was. I think they lost to them by 1 score too, or it might have been 2 scores. What was the final score in that game? Was it 20? I think it was. Was it 27-17? I think that score was. It was. Oh no, it was 20-17. Sorry, my mistake. But yeah, all 1-score games. And now they're on the complete opposite end of those now. And they almost lost to the Panthers. Almost 2 weeks ago now. So yeah, not good for the Vikings, and now especially losing your best player. I mean, their season is pretty much over at this point. So we'll go into some other notable injuries from this past weekend. So Devon Achane for the Dolphins, he's going to miss some time with the knee injury of his own that he suffered on Sunday against the Giants. So that's a big loss too, because he was really tearing it up, and he was taking over that number 1 running back spot. It was basically his job. He kind of stole it from Mostert. Mostert kind of slid into that number 2 spot, and now he's going to be out. Now I don't think this is going to affect the Dolphins as much as Justin Jefferson's injury is going to affect the Vikings, because the Dolphins have playmakers all over the place, and they have 1 loss on the season. It was against the Bills, but the Dolphins, I think, are still going to be okay. Mostert he's dealing with an injury of his own, but they're going to get Jeff Wilson back, so at least that's going to help. You still got Waddle, you still got Tyreek Hill. As long as those guys are still healthy, they're going to be fine. But that's just a huge blow to their offense, because he's been incredible these first few games. I want to go through his stats really quick. And especially from a fantasy perspective too. He's just been unbelievable. So he is likely going to miss a couple of weeks. So I just want to look at his overall stats here. So obviously against the Patriots, he really didn't. He didn't do much. He only had 1 carry for 5 yards. I don't know why they don't have his stats from week 1, but yeah. So from week 2, he had 1 carry for 5 yards. But then the next 3 weeks, he was unbelievable. 18 carries against the Broncos for 203 yards and 2 touchdowns. Against the Bills, he had 8 carries for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he had a really good game. It's just, the Bills were, ahead for most of the time. So that forced the Dolphins to have to throw it. But he had 2 touchdowns in that game. And then against the Giants, he had a 76-yard touchdown, and he had 151 yards rushing. So he was one of the best running backs in football, really. And, for him to go down, it does hurt the offense, but I think the Dolphins are going to be fine. It's not season ending. So, he will be back at some point during the year, but it's just unfortunate because he's been having a good year, and, you don't want to see that happening. So that was the other big injury as well. Arizona Cardinals running back James Conner, he also suffered a knee injury against the Bengals, so he's going to miss multiple weeks. So that just came out recently of him missing time as well, and that's honestly one of the knocks on James Conner is his injuries. The guy's been injured a lot over the course of his career, and he's kind of the engine for that offense. He's the focal point. And, once he got hurt, that kind of changed the whole complexion of their game on Sunday. The Cardinals really couldn't get anything going on offense, and the Bengals kind of took over. And we'll get into that game more specifically, and the Bengals in the final part of the show. But that's a big blow for the Cardinals. They weren't going to really do anything this year, but they've been competitive in their games. And they were winning the game on Sunday at one point, and then it just kind of fell apart. So, it's a big loss for the Cardinals, and so he's going to miss the next couple of weeks. But, some of the other notable injuries, so we touched upon it yesterday. Matt Milano, the linebacker for the Buffalo Bills, he's likely out for the season. Broke his leg and also suffered a knee injury. So that's a huge blow. He's one of the best linebackers in football. And the Bills, they just can't catch a break sometimes with these injuries, onto their defense. And then you also had Tre'Davious White. He's going to be out. I think it was an Achilles. So it's just terrible. The Cowboys, we talked about it. They had a lot of injuries on Sunday. Kevontae Turpin, who scored their only touchdown, he got hurt. Ankle injury. Leighton Vander Esch with a neck injury. And that was because, Micah Parsons, ran him over. He fell down and Micah Parsons hit into him. He got hurt. And then they had some other guys get hurt as well on Sunday, too. So the Cowboys, not only did the 49ers just dismantle them, but they lost some guys on their defense. And they're already out with Trayvon Diggs. So, the hits keep on coming with them, which is just not good. Because, the defense, there's a lot of concerns with that moving forward for the Cowboys. So, not good on that front. The Lions, Emmanuel Mosley, he suffered a season-ending knee injury. I think it was a torn ACL, so he is out for the year. Again, just unfortunate for the Lions. Injuries just in general are just terrible. And there was a lot of them on Sunday. There really was, and especially to key guys. And I just want to confirm that. Yeah, so he actually, Emmanuel Mosley tore his ACL for the second straight season. I didn't even know. I didn't know that. So that's just really terrible news to see with that. So that was another injury. Tank Dell, he was getting evaluated for a concussion against the Falcons. And he's actually been good for them this year, for the Texans. So hopefully he's able to come back. C.J. Stroud needs him for this week. We did touch upon this, Anthony Richardson. So he suffered an AC joint sprain. So he's going to miss some games to his right throwing shoulder. So, he's going to miss some games. So Gardner Minshew is going to have to step in and continue to be the quarterback. And Minshew's actually done well in that role. And you know what? I think the Colts are going to be okay. I think they're going to be okay. Because this division right now is still up for grabs. And they're playing well. Jonathan Taylor's back. I think the Colts can, they could tread water with Minshew until Anthony Richardson comes back. Because although he's, he had a concussion and now he's got this injury, Anthony Richardson, in these games that he's played so far, in the beginning of the season, he looks really good. And the Colts, they might have their franchise quarterback. They might. But we gotta, obviously it's a very small sample size, but I don't know. He's got a lot of talent. And you kind of, it just stinks that, injuries are preventing us from seeing more of him. But, so that was another notable injury from this weekend. The Giants, they just dealing with a ton of injuries themselves. Daniel Jones has got a neck injury, but he should be fine. And I forgot a couple years ago, and I was reminded of that yesterday, that he had a neck injury in 2021, and everybody was talking about this could be career-threatening. But this one, it seems like he's going to be okay. Now he's going to be playing the Bills on Sunday night. So if he is playing and with that offensive line, they should just keep him out. And then one last quick injury before we go to break. Offensive tackle, guard, now a tackle. Elijah Vera Tucker for the Jets. Torn Achilles, out for the season. That's just terrible. He's the best offensive lineman on the Jets. And he actually suffered a season-ending injury last year in Denver as well, same as Breece Hall. Breece Hall didn't get hurt in this game, but, that's just, something like that's just weird. But, again, unfortunate, because he has been the Jets' best offensive lineman this year. But now that's the second year in a row, season-ending injury. So, But yeah, that's basically it when it comes to the injuries. So with that, we're going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we are going to recap the Monday night game between the Packers and the Raiders. So stick around, and we will be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we are going to recap the game from last night between the Packers and the Raiders. So, I came on yesterday, and I talked about how, I thought Jordan Love he's looked okay so far. He's missed some throws. The timing's kind of been off with his receivers. But I said, you know what? I see the talent there, and I feel like, the Packers, they can maybe make a wild card. And I felt confident in saying that they were going to beat the Raiders yesterday because, I just thought that Packers were a better team. And there were some injury concerns going in. Aaron Jones was questionable, and then he ended up getting ruled out. And A.J. Dillon actually, had his best game of the season. He had a touchdown in this game. The Packers' only touchdown in this game. The rest of their points came off of field goals. I just thought the Packers were going to win this game. And what I saw, and I said, listen, the Packers could be a wild card team. But what I saw last night, I was like, what am I watching right now? First of all, the game was just, some of the plays in the game were horrendous. The turnovers on both sides, because Garoppolo had a bad interception too. It was bad. It was really bad. Jordan Love's, not the second interception, but the first one and the third one were both terrible throws. The first one, he's looking right at Spillane. Spillane ended up having 2 interceptions on the day, former Pittsburgh Steeler. Robert Spillane. I was going to say Anthony Spillane, but Robert Spillane. He actually just had 1 career interception prior to the game last night, and he ended the game with 2 more. The first one, Jordan Love was looking right at him, and he threw it right to him. I don't know what he saw on that play, but he threw it directly to Spillane. The second one, he tried to fit it into a tight window. It got deflected, and Spillane picked it off there. And then the third one, the Packers are driving towards the end of the game. And I don't know. Maybe Jordan Love could have took off with it, to get some more yards to get him closer. But then he just throws it up, and it gets picked off there by Robertson. And that was the end of the game. Now, Christian Watson actually looked like he was open on the play, but Jordan Love threw it to him late. And that's why it got picked off. But, it was a rough night for the Packers offense. Overall stats from the game, Jordan Love went 16 of 30 for 182 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions last night for Jordan Love. Packers did run the ball well. A.J. Dillon had 76 yards rushing and a touchdown. Jordan Love had 2 rushes for 37 yards. He had a 26-yard run in the first half. And Christian Watson was their lead receiver. He had 3 receptions for 91 yards. So the big one was a 77-yard reception that, honestly, if he didn't get horse collar tackled, I think he gets into the end zone. And honestly, that was the difference in the game, because that turns into 7 points instead of 3. And we might be having a different conversation. But yeah, the Packers just all night could not get anything going on offense. Their defense is the reason why they were able to stay in the game. I thought they did an okay job. Devontae Adams really didn't have a big game. Jacoby Myers, they had problems guarding him. He had 7 receptions for 75 yards and a touchdown. Devontae only had 4 for 45. Josh Jacobs, had a rushing touchdown. He had a big 24-yard run, but 69 yards rushing overall. So the Packers, they're not a good run. I mean, both teams are bad against the run, but I thought the Packers did an okay job, containing Jacobs for the most part. And Garoppolo really didn't do. I mean, he was okay, I guess. 22 of 31, 208 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. His interception was bad too. But yeah, I mean, listen, the Raiders, they get a big win there. They protect their home field. Packers, I mean, that was just a bad loss. I really don't know what to say. There's a lot of people killing Jordan Love, and listen, I think the talent is still there. We're only 5 games into the NFL season, and I think Jordan Love, I think he still can be good. Now, I went back and I really thought about it, last night after this game. And like I said, I thought the Packers could be a wild card team. But then, I really think about it, and you go through the games this season. So, what was their best game this year of their wins? Of their 2 wins? And it was the Bears game. The Bears. Who knows what's going to happen, because the Bears scored 40 points on Thursday night. And so their season could, turn around and they end up having a decent year. But for me, like I always say, it's a wait-and-see approach. The Packers won that game 38-20, right? After that, they blow a lead against the Falcons in Atlanta. They lose by a point in that game. They were down 17-0 going into the fourth quarter against the Saints, and they score 18 points, right? And you know what? The reason why they lost that game is because Derek Carr got injured, and Jameis Winston just did not move the ball. So Packers win that game, but Jordan Love did have a very good fourth quarter. Then you go up against the Lions, and he just did not have a good game there at home. And then you have three interceptions against the Raiders, who are not a good defense. So, really, if Derek Carr doesn't get hurt, Packers should be 1-4 right now. And their only win is against the Bears. So, I talk about, this team could be a wild card team. And listen, it's still possible. They have a bye week now, so maybe that can really help them and get themselves, on the right track here. But I don't know. I mean, and it's just the offense really could not get anything going yesterday. And listen, you got to get Aaron Jones back, because Aaron Jones, he's their best player on offense. But it was just a bad game all around. Guys were dropping passes. I mean, Romeo Doubs, who's been their leading receiver, he had a couple of drops. One of them was right in his grasp, and he bobbled it and dropped it. So, I don't really know. I mean, I think the defense, they got some injuries. I mean, Devondre Campbell, one of their linebackers, he's missed a few games. So they're hoping to get him back soon. Obviously, you got injuries on the offensive line. I know Elton Jenkins, he played yesterday, so that's good. But you're not going to have Bakhtiari. So they're just going to have to deal with that this year. And that he probably isn't going to be on the Packers moving forward. But we'll see. But yeah, I mean, you look at the Packers so far this year. I mean, they could be 3-2. They could be 1-4. Because I mean, listen, they should have won against the Falcons. I mean, I don't know how that. I really don't understand how they blew that lead. I mean, the Falcons just ran all over them too. But that game they had won. So, and they could have won. Well, I shouldn't say they should have won the game last night, but they could have won the game last night. That game was in their grasp. They had opportunities, but they didn't capitalize on things. They didn't capitalize. They didn't get a touchdown off of that big Christian Watson play. They ended up kicking 3. And Jordan Love just made bad throws. But I think it's too soon to tell if he's the answer or not. I think we got to see how this season plays out. Because I really do see the talent there. And the other thing, too, is the Packers have a very young team. They got 2 young tight ends, a lot of young receivers, young guys on defense. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, there was a stat last night. I don't know what it was. It was like the 3rd straight game or something. They're starting 10 or more rookies. It was something like that, they said on the broadcast. It was something to do with 10 rookies, them starting 10 rookies. So they got a very young team. The other thing, too, is Matt LaFleur a good head coach? Like, is he? Because, I mean, this is the first year without Aaron Rodgers. And ever since he became the head coach of the Packers, they've had very good regular seasons. But is that a product of him, or is that a product? It's a product of Aaron Rodgers. That's what it was. Now, I think his scheming with Aaron Rodgers, I mean, I think that was a very good combination because that won Aaron Rodgers back-to-back MVPs. But now you're going to have some growing pains with this young quarterback. I think Matt LaFleur, when it comes to making adjustments, I mean, you've seen that in big games. I mean, look at the championship games against Tampa Bay and the 49ers. I mean, Mostert ran all over them. And, I mean, the Bucs dominated the Packers for most of that game. And then they started mounting a comeback, but then it was too little, too late. So, I don't know. And Packer fans have complaints with Joe Barry, their defensive coordinator. But, what the defense, I thought, did its job. I mean, it's just the offense couldn't do anything. But, I mean, listen, for the Raiders, though, I mean, I've been talking about the Packers for most of the segment, but for the Raiders, though, I mean, it's a good win for them. This is a good game to get Josh Jacobs going. He's had a good couple of games in a row here. I was surprised how Devontae Adams really was, like, a non-factor in this game. Like, they kept going to Jacoby Myers. Michael Mayer, their tight end, he had 2 big catches in the beginning of the game, and then he didn't get targeted after. Well, he did get one more target. Garoppolo threw a pass to him, and he was wide open, and he missed him. Mayer was diving for it. But, yeah, for the Raiders, I mean, they're playing in a tough division. I mean, the defense, I'm not buying into their defense. But Max Crosby is an absolute beast. I mean, he had another sack last night. And that was one of the things that the Packers, I think, were having problems with was Max Crosby. He just was a one-man wrecking crew the whole night. I mean, they were trying so many different things to try to, block him. But, that's their franchise guy right there is Max Crosby. So at least they have him on defense. But again, the defense in general for the Raiders just isn't very good. But that's why I was just so confused with the Packers. Like, you got track stars on offense. Well, not track stars, but you got some fast guys on offense. Christian Watson, I mean, he just missed Christian Watson by a step on a long pass that he threw late in the game. You hit that, I mean, that changes the game right there too. Romeo Doubs, who was their leading receiver going into the game, I mean, he was a non-factor. So, yeah, it was a rough game yesterday for Green Bay. It was a good game for Vegas. So they play the Patriots next week. Packers are on a bye. So hopefully for the Packers, they can get themselves right. But right now, when it comes to the division, it's not a realistic thing. It's the Lions. The Lions are in the driver's seat to win this division. It's going to happen. So, and then as for the Raiders, I mean, we'll see. Listen, they have playmakers on offense. They have some very good players on offense. Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers has been good. Josh Jacobs, who was amazing last year. It's just, I think the conference that they're in, the division they're in, it's going to be an uphill battle for them. But you know what? They'll take that win. They protected their home field, like I said. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, so that's pretty much it when it comes to the second part of the show here. So when we come back from our second break, we are now going to talk about, since I just said the Raiders' opponent for next week, we're going to talk about what is wrong with the Patriots. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to talk about what is wrong with the New England Patriots. This is something that I said I was going to touch upon this week. It kind of shuffled how I was going to do things with the injury news, with the stuff with Jefferson and Achane and some of the big injuries from Sunday. Other injuries from Sunday. This was kind of going to be like the focal point of the show, but the injury news kind of became that. So, but yeah, with this topic here, this is the third part of the show. But once again, I just want to remind you guys for donations and tips and to get your comments recognized, make sure to go to streamelements.com/GSMC Really helps the show. And once again, for bonus coverage materials that are not covered by this broadcast, make sure to go to patreon.com and search up GSMC Sports Network. And once again, that's where you can find all the exclusive content from my podcast, this podcast, the football podcast, the GSMC baseball podcast, college football, basketball, and fantasy football. That's where you can find all of them, is on patreon.com. So let's get into this segment here. So what is wrong with the New England Patriots? There's a lot. There is a lot. Back-to-back weeks. I mean, Bill Belichick. I mean, I've never seen this. Bill Belichick coached team. 30-plus point losses. They lost 38-3 against Dallas in Week 4, and again, that's at Dallas. Okay. Now, this past Sunday, at home, 34-0 to the Saints, who have not looked good offensively. The Saints really have not looked that good. And now the Patriots are 1-4, and their only win is against the Jets, 15-10. And the Jets, they could have won that game. So the Patriots, could very easily be 0-5. But right now they're 1-4, and there's a lot with it. I saw a clip with Julian Edelman. He was on Colin Cowherd's show, and one of the things he brought up was, of course, them drafting receivers, and how some of the guys really just did not pan out. Now, one obviously popped into my head, and that was N'Keal Harry. He really just did not pan out. This is a guy that I think got drafted over DK Metcalf. But now, who is responsible for that? It's Bill Belichick. And what's gone on since Tom Brady left? The Patriots have not been a good team. They just haven't. Now, they made the playoffs in 2021. 2020, that was when Cam Newton came in. He actually got off to an okay start, but then, we got COVID, and then, they ended up finishing 7-9 on the season and missing the playoffs. Following year, they made it with Mac Jones' rookie season, and then last year they went 8-9 and missed the playoffs. But ever since Tom Brady has left, and even Tom Brady's last couple of seasons, I mean, the receiving core was not good. Obviously, 2018 you had Edelman and you had Gronk, so I'm not talking about them, but I mean, the receivers that they had. I mean, you go and draft N'Keal Harry. I mean, you're getting Benjamin Watson to replace Gronk. And you're signing guys like Devontae Parker and Kendrick Bourne and Juju Smith-Schuster now, and you're bringing in Ezekiel Elliott and Mike Gesicki. I mean, they're not star players. I mean, you're not bringing in guys to surround your quarterback. And Mac Jones, for me, I mean, doesn't look like the guy. He just doesn't. Now, he's kind of had, I relate to him with Daniel Jones in this respect. I mean, let's look at his stats now. So I got a graphic here. So 2021 was his first season. Now, obviously, this year is a small sample size because it's only 5 games. But you look at, like, passing yards, passing yards per game, the touchdown to interception ratio, the passer rating. I mean, it all decreases. It all goes down over these 3 years. You go from his best season was with Josh McDaniels. And he was a Pro Bowler, believe it or not. He was a Pro Bowler in 2021. But then Josh McDaniels leaves, goes to coach with the Raiders, who we just talked about. And then you go out and you bring in Joe Judge and Matt Patricia to call plays on your offense. Joe Judge, who is a special teams guy, and Matt Patricia, who is your defensive coordinator. And now you got him calling plays for your offense. And what happens? Mac Jones, 14 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. Now, he did miss some games with injuries. I understand that. I think it was like a high ankle sprain that he suffered last year. But, I mean, there's that video of him against the Bills on Thursday night last year, like screaming. Like he was, visibly upset with some of the play calling decisions there. And now this year, you look at his season. I mean, he's barely passing for over 200 yards. 5 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. I mean, he's on his way to having a bad season. And I don't think he is the answer. I don't think he is going to be an elite quarterback. It's not going to happen. I don't see it with him. But I also think you're not seeing what he can really do because you're not giving him enough talent to, be successful. But I think Bill Belichick, I think he is the problem there. He's kind of getting in his own way. And, the drafting decisions, giving and basically saying I like getting rid of Brady. Saying that's where they're at right now. I mean, I don't think Brady didn't want to leave. Belichick pushed him out the door. And he tried doing that several times. With Garoppolo, he wanted to do that with, and, they traded Garoppolo. It's just, that's really the main problem. And we got a chat. Mac Jones is a horrible teammate. Belichick is a horrible GM. Yeah, it's kind of looked like that. And also, with Mac Jones being a horrible teammate, I mean, also you see like the video with him and Sauce Gardner. He like punched Sauce Gardner. But it's not the first time that's happened too. With him, I think he did he tried to take someone's like leg out or something. I don't know if he like tackled somebody wrong or he like. I don't know. I'm trying to remember what it was, but there was another instance like that too. But yeah, and people are just done with Belichick. I mean, they're done with him. I was watching a clip from one of the Boston radio shows, and everybody's turned. It seems like a lot of people just turned on Belichick. But it's like, what have the Patriots done since Brady left? Nothing. I mean, they went to the playoffs, but what happened? They got destroyed by the Bills. They got destroyed. I forget what the score was. I think the Bills put up like 50 points against them. It was terrible. And then they took a step back. And even more of a step back. But I also and now the defense, they're just dealing with a ton of injuries now. The rookie corner, Gonzalez, he's out for the year. Judon's hurt. I mean, they trade for J.C. Jackson. They get him back after he signed that big contract with the Chargers. But again, like, what does all this say about Belichick? Where Brady leaves, goes to Tampa, wins a Super Bowl, then comes back the following year and has another great year. Could have won the Super Bowl that year if it wasn't for the Rams knocking him out. And what have the Patriots done? Nothing. They really have not done. They have done nothing. They are the worst right now. They are the worst team in their division. And I say that I think the Jets are better, but they keep beating the Jets. I still think they're the worst. Like, you don't have any elite playmakers. Like, who is like the gotta have from the Patriots offense? Who? I mean, Ramondre Stevenson is a nice running back. Is he an elite running back? No. They don't have an elite wide receiver. Their best like pass catcher is arguably one of their tight ends. But again, that all goes back to Belichick. This roster construction. I mean, signing Ezekiel Elliott? You're not getting prime Zeke. You're just not. And this was the other thing too I was thinking about. Like, you go back to all the Super Bowls that the Patriots have won in the 2010s, right? Yeah, you had Rob Gronkowski. But you look at their receivers. Julian Edelman, great player. But, like, was Julian Edelman an elite wide receiver? I would say he was an elite playoff wide receiver. But, like, who was it? You had Brandon Cooks, right, for a year. And he was great. But they didn't win the Super Bowl with him. That was the Super Bowl they lost. I mean, 2018, your top receivers were Edelman, Chris Hogan. I mean, and, of course, you had Gronk. But I went back to like 2013, right? They lose Wes Welker. And who did they go and replace him with? Danny Amendola, who did turn out to be a very productive player for them. But be honest, how many, I didn't know who he was. How many of us knew who Danny Amendola was when the Patriots signed him? I don't think that many from the Rams. Now, again, I could be wrong. But he was not a household name. Now, again, Brady made it work. Whatever Belichick did, Brady made it work. I mean, that was the year they had Amendola and Kembrell Tompkins. I mean, it was just a weird assortment of receivers. But that was Edelman's like true like breakout season was 2013. And, of course, again, you still had Gronk. Gronk was their elite weapon. But, you know, they bring in guys like Brandon LaFell. Mohamed Sanu they had for a minute. I mean, these are just guys I'm naming off the top of my head. Malcolm Mitchell. They never really had like an elite wide receiver. Unless you want to call when Brandon Cooks was really good. But, Belichick just never really like got Brady any like star wide receiver to work with like during the 2010s. I mean, obviously you had Randy Moss. But that was the year they didn't win the Super Bowl. But now it's just, I don't know what it is with them. It's just the staff decisions. I mean, you gotten guys that you're calling offensive plays that have, that's not their background. I mean, now you got Bill O'Brien in there, and you would think maybe that would do something. But now it just seems like they're regressing even more. So, I mean, it really comes down to the head coach. And it's Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick has a lot of power with this team. And maybe it's time he takes a step back. Get somebody else to make decisions when it comes to personnel. And maybe you might see different results there. Take him out of some of those conversations and have him coach the team. And people, I think, are just done with his act, too. I mean, the press conferences, he's got those, one-sentence responses. Now, Bill Belichick is still a Hall of Famer. First ballot Hall of Famer, one of the greatest coaches of all time. He knows, football. But it might just be the game passed him by. Because you look at the AFC, it's loaded with all these young quarterbacks, and Mac Jones is not a part of that conversation. Now, again, they got to surround him with more talent, but I really don't think if they did surround him with talent, I just don't see it with him. So, but that's pretty much it when we talk about this topic. Let me know what you guys think. So with that, we're going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about the Bengals. And if they're back or not after picking up a big win against the Cardinals on Sunday. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final segment of the show, we're going to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals and whether or not, for me, I think they're back or not. Well, first I'm going to come out and say, still, wait and see when it comes to them. But based on their performance on Sunday, that was very encouraging. One of the main points people were talking about is Joe Burrow's calf and maybe how it's starting to look a little bit better, which, it did. Threw for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. But obviously the bigger story coming out of that game was the performance of Jamar Chase. 15 receptions for 192 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the Bengals won 34-20. Now, again, it's the Arizona Cardinals. They've been competitive this year. But, listen, the way the Bengals played last week against the Titans, and how they've kind of looked offensively so far this year, you're going to take that. So, I just want to look at go through the Bengals' upcoming schedule. So, they do have a decent amount of tough games on their schedule here. So, with next week, they got a home game. That's against the Seahawks. That's a tough game. Because the Seahawks are a very good offensive team. So that's going to be tough for the Bengals. But again, it's a home game. So we'll see what happens. Then they go on a bye, which I think they really need that because that's another week to give Joe Burrow rest and to heal up that calf. So that calf's going to be even better. He's going to need it because coming out of the bye, the Bengals are going to be playing at San Francisco. So that is going to be a really tough game for the Bengals. Because right now, the 49ers just look unbeatable right now. They really do. Now, the Bengals do have a very good offense. And if Burrow is, if that calf is feeling a lot better going up against the Niners, we'll see. Because they got the playmakers. This past Sunday they were without T. Higgins, so you're hoping they get him back. But I still kind of favor the 49ers in that game. But still, we'll see what happens. Bengals got a very good offense, and especially if Burrow's healthy. Then they play Buffalo at home. They did beat Buffalo in the playoffs, and actually this will be in Cincinnati this time. And obviously, they were playing each other last year, late in the season, and that was obviously when the Damar Hamlin incident happened. But then they were able to play the game in the playoffs, and the Bengals really dominated that game. But that's on Sunday night, Week 9, this year in Cincinnati, so that's going to be a great game. But yeah, 2 tough games coming out of the bye, and then of course you have Seattle. So yeah, those are 3 tough games. Then you got the Texans at home. I wouldn't say that's a gimme because C.J. Stroud has played well this year. So, Bengals are the better team, but, who knows? Then you got the Ravens, going to Baltimore. So that's going to be a tough game. They did lose a close game to them last year. I think the final score was like 16-13. So that's going to be a tough game. Then you're home against Pittsburgh, which, again, is a divisional matchup. That's going to be tough. Then they're at Jacksonville. Then they're home against the Colts, home against the Vikings. So I think those are 2 wins there, but we'll see. The Vikings, it depends on if Justin Jefferson is playing. I mean, it depends on what the Vikings are going to look like in Week 15. I mean, Kirk Cousins might not be there. They might have traded him or something. I don't know. Then they're at Pittsburgh, at Kansas City Week 17. That's New Year's Eve. And then they're home against the Browns. So their schedule is tough. It is a tough schedule. But if you have a healthy Joe Burrow and you can continue to ride that, and you know how Jamar Chase played in this game, if he can continue to do that, because there are just some games where he just disappears. You know, I think the Bengals are going to be okay. I think they are. And I think that also when you look at the division is still up for grabs. Because, listen, the funny thing is, I really don't understand how they struggle against the Browns. I just don't get it. It really is one of the weirdest things. The Browns just own Joe Burrow. At least in Cleveland. I mean, last year they beat the Browns at home. But, you know, they had that bad loss to them earlier in the season. I mean, they're one game out. Right now, the Steelers own first place. I think the Bengals, you know, can catch up, of course. I mean, well, being one game out, they definitely can. But, yeah, this division is not out of reach by any means. They can definitely, you know, right the ship and get themselves, you know, in that position. Because right now, I mean, you know, the Browns, Deshaun Watson still doesn't look very good. The Browns do have a very good defense. But, you know, you're missing Nick Chubb now. You know, like I just said, Watson doesn't look, you know, the same like he used to. So I think the Bengals are better than the Browns. Ravens are dealing with a ton of injuries. I mean, they didn't look good on Sunday against the Steelers defense. So, you know, I don't think they're going to run away with the division. I still think the Ravens are a playoff team, and I still think they are a good team and to be respected. But, you know, again, the Bengals, I see them passing them, and I see them passing the Steelers because, listen, the Steelers, they won a very close game against the Ravens, but I think the Ravens also, like, you know, gifted the Steelers with some things. I mean, that interception in the red zone by Lamar was bad. You know, and Matt Canada still should not have a job, the offensive coordinator for the Steelers. So, combination of all those things, I just look at the Bengals as still the best team in this division. And I think ultimately, even with the tough schedule, they're going to be the ones that have the division crown. I right now, that's where I'm leaning towards. But again, that can all change if Joe Burrow ends up getting hurt. Like, because, I mean, now you're coming out of the bye and you're playing against the 49ers. And that offensive line, you still don't really trust it of the Bengals. So, yeah. And especially with Joe Burrow still dealing with the injury, that's not going to be the best. That is like the worst game. That's the worst team to be going up against coming out of a bye with an injured quarterback. If he's still, you know, dealing with the calf injury. But it looks better. I mean, the big play to Chase, I mean, that was just a great throw and a great catch in the game against the Cardinals. So, I mean, listen, for at least one game, the Bengals looked like they returned to themselves. And, you know, because it didn't look good for a while in that game. Because, like I said yesterday, I mean, the Cardinals had the lead, at a certain point in the game in the first half. And if it wasn't for that bad interception by Josh Dobbs, the Bengals wouldn't have taken the lead there. I mean, they probably still end up winning the game, but still. And the Cardinals had the lead. So, but it was definitely encouraging. I think my takeaway from the game is anything that I saw from them was an improvement. I mean, because again, like last week, they absolutely got destroyed by the Titans, 27-3. So, and you know what? Listen, the conference is tough. I mean, you look around the rest of the conference. I mean, I think the Bengals are better than, every team in the South, even though they just got destroyed by, the Titans. You look at the AFC East. I mean, listen, they did beat the Bills last year. I got to see them play again. Right now, I'd probably take the Bills over them. But again, that's because you got the healthier quarterback. I would probably take the Dolphins over them right now. But again, it's also close. I mean, they're neck and neck with the Dolphins and the Bills. If Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow, if he's healthy. And then over on the AFC West side, I mean, obviously, they've had the Chiefs' number other than the AFC Championship game. So, it's going to be another close game when they play each other on New Year's Eve. But I think they're better than the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Broncos, of course. So right now I think their biggest threats in the conference. I think they're better than the Ravens, the Bengals, even though the Ravens beat them this year. But yeah, I think the top 4 teams, if the Bengals are full, if Joe Burrow's healthy, I think the top 4 teams are the Bills, the Dolphins, the Chiefs, and the Bengals, in the AFC. And then you got the Ravens, I'd probably put at like the number 5 spot. That's probably what I would do. Jags, I'm still kind of like, iffy with, just because, I think they benefited from, and we talked about this, my friends and I, just them, being in London for a week, and the Bills just getting there, so they were well rested. We'll have to see, but I at least think you got to be encouraged with what you saw from the Bengals on Sunday, and going forward, we'll see what happens. But they really have a tough schedule ahead of them. And again, if Joe Burrow got hurt and has to miss time, which I hope he doesn't, because I'm tired of seeing injuries, but it's going to keep happening over the course of this season. If Joe Burrow got hurt, then this conversation's out the window. But he gets healthier, and the bye week, heals him up even more. Bengals are going to be good. They are. And, they got so many playmakers on offense. They have a good team. The defense is good. They should be okay. So, for me, it's kind of a wait-and-see approach, but I'd probably lean towards saying, yeah, based on what I saw and based on, the performance Jamar Chase had. Because he said in his interview after the game against the Titans, he's always open. And he was open a lot on Sunday. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for the show today. Of course, great show, as always. Obviously, got a game on Thursday, of course. We got the Broncos and the Chiefs. So we'll preview that on Thursday. Figure out what to talk about tomorrow, because obviously we're in the middle of the week now. But, yeah, we're almost up to week 6. In the NFL, which is crazy. We're almost we're getting to the halfway point already, and again, that's why you got to appreciate when football comes back, because then it just ends like that. So, but one of the things that I would say is just can guys just stop getting hurt? But you know what? That's too much to ask. It's too much, because it's going to happen. But hopefully, maybe I'll be right. But I probably won't. So, yeah, that's really one of the things that I would say is just I'm hoping for no more major injuries. And, because players are still talking about, grass and replacing that instead of turf. And I really think there is going to be a conversation to be had, because the injuries are just, it's just getting too much. But we'll have to see what happens with that. But, yeah, another week in the books, almost halfway through the season already. And, yeah, so tomorrow maybe we talk about, some MVP discussion. That's one topic that I have in mind at the moment, or that might be something I wait till, we get more towards the middle part of the season to go over. But, yeah, we'll figure it out. But I thank you guys all for tuning in today. I have yesterday's show, all 4 parts posted. So if you missed anything from yesterday, the 4 parts of the show are posted for that. I'll be working on trying to get that up on Spotify. And yeah, so we'll be back again tomorrow, same time. And now I'm going to go and record the Patreon for today. So with that, that's all the time that we have for today. Once again, I thank you guys for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, And I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care.